Oh, yes, it's Louise. Louise Hollingsworth is presenting.
Just start the first item on the agenda, which is the appointment of the chairman. So could I have a nomination, please?
Councillor Richard Thomas.
I'd like to second that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, councillor, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, I'm already introduced things. So you can see my inexperience of this showing rather obviously, but never mind. So anyway, now we're going to hear from the licensing officer, Louise Hollingsworth. No?
Sorry, councillor, it's Emma.
Sorry, right. I'm not doing very well, am I? I can only get better. I'd like to. So Emma, if you would like to present your report.
Thank you, Chair. Right, so there is one representation objecting to the application regarding the application for a premises licence. Therefore, it has been referred to this panel today for determination. The applicant has applied as a limited company, COCL, if I've pronounced that correctly, COCL Services Limited. And the premises in question is at 30 Western Road, Bexhill-on-Sea. Appendices B, C and D within my report show the location plan, the proposed licence area and photographs of the area and the premises itself. So the premises is situated in Western Road, Bexhill, which is a one-way street and one of the main commercial shopping roads in the centre of Bexhill. The vast majority of the commercial units have residential accommodation above them. The premises is currently empty and housed a beauty therapist salon as its previous occupants. There also used to be a gym above the premises, but this is also currently empty. So on the 18th of May this year, the applicant applied for the following licensable activity: the sale, supply of alcohol off sales only, Monday to Sunday, 06:30 to 2300 hours, and the opening hours reflect the same, Monday to Sunday, 06:30 to 2300 hours. Within the application documents, the description explains that the applicant wishes to trade as a convenience store, offering a variety of goods and services to the local community. The applicant provided steps in how they intend to promote the 4 licensing objectives, and these are reproduced in Appendix A. And in the event that the application is granted, these will be translated into conditions included in the licence, unless the conditions have been modified by the licensing authority following consideration of relevant representations. There's no previous premises licence history, and equally there are no noise complaints at the premises logged on our environmental health database. So as I said, the application has been subject to the usual public advertisement.
Thank you, Mr. Cuddick. So we just reached the point now where we're hearing the report from the licensing officer. Okay, that's where we are.
There was one relevant representation, and that was under the licensing objective of public nuisance. The representation is reproduced in full at Appendix E. The applicant emailed the objector in an attempt to address their concerns prior to today's hearing. The objector did not respond to the applicant, but advised the licensing department that they did not wish to withdraw their representation. The Licensing Act 2003 requires that a copy of the application is sent to the responsible authorities, and this did happen, and none of the responsible authorities provided any representation or objection to this application. There are no representations from people supporting the application, and as I've said, there's one objecting to it. So the Licensing Act 2003 requires that the council, as the local licensing authority, carry out its functions with a view to promoting the 4 licensing objectives, which are the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. In exercising those functions, the licensing authority must also have regard to guidance issued by the Secretary of State and its own statement of licensing policy. Under Section 181 and Schedule 5, Part 3 of the Licensing Act 2003, rights of appeal exist to the Magistrates' Court against the decision of the licensing authority. Such appeal may be made on behalf of the applicant, the holder of the premises licence, or any other person who made relevant representations in relation to the application. So under the Section 18 of the Licensing Act 2003, the following options are available to the subcommittee: to grant the licence subject to the conditions consistent with the operating schedule, modified to such extent as considered necessary for the promotion of the licensing objectives; to exclude from the scope of the licence any of the licensable activities to which the application relates; or to refuse to spend all submissions made at the hearing. The panel shall determine the application. And that is the end of my report.
Thank you very much, Emma. Emma is our Environmental Health Licensing Officer, so thank you very much for that report. I'm assuming that because the responsible authorities haven't made any submissions, that there isn't a representative of them here today, or is that incorrect?
Yes, that's correct, yes.
So in which case, we go straight on then to the applicant, and to give the applicant a chance to present his case.
Thank you, Chair.
If you would like to do that.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm not doing very well either, to start with, because, although you are doing well now. The report I listened to very carefully says that the licence runs from 6:30, and in my note I put 6 a.m. So I've made a mistake on my first line of mine. So we are talking about 6:30 at start, not 6 a.m., which I've mistakenly put.
I believe we have 6:30 in the papers.
So I'll go through that.
Thank you.
So the applicant is here, CoCal. He's the director of the business, which is making the application today, and he's also the manager of the premises. He's got some 10 years licensing experience, is that right? Yep. And he's been a DPS for 5 years. And during all of that time, he's not had any problems or any issues. So he's an experienced, responsible retailer who carry his experience over to these new premises. The premises, we have a look at page 11, if we may, Chair, are looking a bit run down now. As we heard, it was a beauty or nail bar with a gymnasium above it. And at the moment, it's empty. There are a few empty shops in that road. So it's a really good thing to use shops, not to leave them empty. And that's now being made into a nice convenience store in a commercial road for local people to use. There's a plan on page 10. And it's very small. I think Mr. Baker may have some larger copies. Would you like a larger copy to look at?
Does anybody wish to have a larger copy? Yes, we would.
Would you like a larger copy?
That would be
Is there
much
one-
appreciated.
is there
Thank
one
you.
for-
Thank you for making it available.
We can see from the plan where the alcohol areas are, and we can see the rest of the shop. So we can see it's a proper convenience store selling a range of confectionery, dairy and soft drinks and so on, and various other convenience store goods, as well as the alcohol. And there are the CCTV cameras there, which we can see with a little symbol for security camera. A couple outside, one inside, another one which covers people coming in and out, and then various others around the shop, which cover the alcohol and all the other areas. So a well-designed, well-laid-out shop, no alcohol by the entrance to dissuade anyone from perhaps trying to take it when they leave, and all the spirits behind the counter, because they're small and quite expensive items, which are perhaps attractive to shoplifters. So that was designed by Mr. Baker, who's got lots of experience in designing these sorts of community convenience stores. We've had one representation. The representation from Mr. Crotty is on page 14. I won't go through his representation. I'll obviously leave that for him to do. But he probably wouldn't know this because it's something that you get to know in licensing circles. Any representation has to be relevant to the licensing objectives. So parking is mentioned, and parking isn't something we take into account because parking is for the Highways Authority and the Planning Department. And also need, there's no need for another shop selling alcohol. Need isn't a criterion anymore. It used to be before the 2003 Act, but it's not anymore. So neither of those are. But public nuisances, which is what Mr. Crotty bases his objection on mainly, in the form of noise, I expect, and litter. So conditions are put together by the applicant, and the conditions are in the agenda. I think they're on page 6. So I don't propose, Chair, unless you wish me to read them all out, but they talk about training, and Mr. Baker has a manual here, a training manual, which is used to train staff at premises so that they all know what they're doing. He can take you through that manual if you wish him to, or he can give you a brief outline of the way the training is conducted. Would you wish him to do that, Chair?
Unless my fellow panel members feel otherwise, I suspect we don't need to. Would you like to?
I do have a question though about the training.
Well, Mr.
Could
Baker.
we just need to wait a little bit until the reference is finished.
Okay, so there's comprehensive training there, and it's all logged and recorded so that the police or licensing team can go in and ask to see the records, and they can make sure that people have been trained, and they can say, who's that there? Oh, that's Mr. Len Smith, right? Let's see his training record. Yeah, here it is. And he's had the training, and it's all been done as it should have been done. Where they're going to have training before anyone can sell, and then refresher training to make sure people are kept up to date on what's going on, a minimum of 12 months. And then there's number 5, which is CCTV. And as you've seen from other applications you've heard, there are lots of CCTV conditions there to make sure people have it and it works and it dates and records and that it can download images and it has to be kept for so many days, and if it breaks down, they have to let people know. So those are quite comprehensive, and those are all the sort of conditions you'd expect to see on a modern convenience store such as this one. Then there's proof of age, of course, because you have to always guard against underage people trying to buy alcohol. So we've got the Challenge 25 scheme, where if you look under 25, you have to show you're over 18. You say there which of the IDs that will accept. Student union cards, no thank you, because they're often forged. So only certain ones with a hologram and a photograph and so on. There'll be a refusals log so that the staff put in there anybody who's been refused, and then other staff who come on can look at that and think, oh, keep my eye out for that person. They may come back. The licensing people can come in and look at it as well to make sure it's being used properly. And then another log for any incidents, if there's any crime or disorder or any issues arise. And then the beer, lager and cider ABV is being limited to 6.4%. except for premium products. And police agreement we saw before any lagers, beer or cider above that limit is sold. Sort of try to stop very high strength. I don't know if you've tasted any of these very high strength beers, lagers. It actually tastes horrible. So the only reason probably to drink them is to get drunk as quickly as possible. So those are not going to be sold. Prominent clear notices should be displayed at all exits to advise customers to respect the needs of the local community and accept the behaviour in public spaces when leaving the premises. That's the noise condition. And the DPS will ensure staff sweep the pavement area in front of the premises daily. So that's the litter condition. That's to make sure that there's no litter left around the place. Okay. Now, as far as the opening hours are concerned, 6:30 till 11, as I say, your policy talks about after 11 p.m. Actually, the thing I looked at again, mea culpa again, is more to do with restaurants and pubs and so on. But 11 o'clock is the time when people really need to go to sleep, so not selling after 11. And then there's your policy and the government guidance, which says that shops, stores and supermarkets should normally be free to provide sales of alcohol for consumption off the premises at any times when the retail outlet is open for shopping, unless there are good reasons based on the licensing objectives for restricting those hours. So this shop will be open from 6:30 to 11, therefore, unless there's some very strong reason not to give them 6:30 to 11, that's what we should have. Then, as we were told at the beginning, all the responsible authorities were informed about the application. Any of them could have made representations. None of them have made representations. So we can take it that they don't have any issues or problems with the application. Otherwise, they would be here or they would have put a representation in. Again, the Section 182 guidance underlines the weight that should be given to the views of responsible authorities. Each responsible authority will be an expert in their respective field. And in some cases, it's likely a particular responsible authority with the licensing authority's main source of advice in relation to a particular licensing objective. For example, the police have a key role in managing the nighttime economy and should have good working relationships with those operating in their local area. The police should usually, therefore, be the licensing authority's main source of advice on matters relating to promotion of crime and disorder licensing objectives. Now, there's no representation from environmental health. And environmental health are the people who would have an issue if there was some public nuisance problem likely to be caused by the premises. And the bill, when it went through Parliament, was made clear by the government at the report stage in the House of Lords. Judgment of the merits of an application against the licensing objective should be left to the experts on crime and disorder of the police, the experts on public nuisance of the local environmental health authorities. So the experts have looked at this and they don't see that there will be an issue with public nuisance, and particularly with noise or with litter. Then there's the case of Thwaites. I don't know, Claire, whether you're familiar with the case of Thwaites, but most licensing committees have this to them when the police are not here. Prophet probably hasn't seen the case, but what it says basically is that if the police are not objecting, then the committee should take that into account and not substitute their own views, which a magistrate's court did, and the High Court overruled them and said that they should have followed the rules properly and stuck to that. Is that a fair summary? Rather than go through it all. Okay, so that's the application, and we respectfully invite you to grant the application as applied for, Chair.
Can I thank you for your very detailed presentation of the case, which was helpful to the committee. And now, before we move to questions, I'd just like to ask Mr. Ganan Sundaram, I hope I said that correctly, would you like to say something further on your behalf at this point?
No.
Right, in which case, can we now move to questions then about the application? Councillor Timpey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My first question is in the hearing note, number 2, you refer to the 10 years licensing experience and 5 years as a DPS. I'd like to know if that was in similar premises or what type of business you were the DPS for?
I working in similar place and petrol stations as well.
Petrol station?
Petrol station.
A convenience store?
Yes, I'm the DPS for convenience store as well in 2 years ago.
2 years ago?
Yes.
Okay. So you have relevant experience. And then the other question I have is about training. In the very comprehensive operating schedule, we have reference to the premises license holder shall provide a refresher training session to all relevant staff members as and when deemed necessary. And I'd like to know what you would consider happening that would cause you to want to do a refresher course in training.
Within the manual, the refresher training would be no more than at least annually. So obviously when the business first starts trading, but before they sell alcohol, everybody is taken through the training manual. I'll give it a brief outline to explain what it's all about. Within the manual, there are a number of sections. I won't go through, but section 3 is the element that staff will be taken through in detail. They would read it. There's also a little pamphlet that, as the manual can't go home with the member of staff, so it's a business document. There is a manual that each member of staff see, which is these photocopy. That member of staff such as that. So that's a duplicate in section 3. Member staff would read that. Then when they're ready, they would be tested on that by one of the 5 different tests in section 4. Multiple choice, there are some written answers involved. They would do that under the supervision of the DPS, Oakland, as he's DPS, and he would actually mark those papers. So he invigilates it, just like an exam. He would invigilate it, and then he would mark the papers. If any of the staff get anything wrong, he would go back and find out why that was wrong. Sometimes it's misreading multiple choice questions and misunderstanding the question. They would go through that, and then those test papers would be kept within member of staff's training folder for alcohol. Once they pass the test, they then have to read and sign what's called a training statement. Those are the key aspects regarding the sale of alcohol. In other words, not selling to drunk people, not selling to underage, checking certain forms of identification to satisfy themselves that they are, a person is a person over 18, and similar sort of questions. So they have to sign that statement. If they won't sign it, they're not allowed to sell alcohol. That's countersigned by the DPS. That statement as well is put in, one for each member of staff is also put inside their training. Now, best practice dictates or suggests that when you come to authorise a member of staff to sell alcohol, it's best to do it in writing rather than verbally, because only a person who has a personal licence or has been authorised to do so by a person who has a personal licence can sell alcohol. So not all the staff members will have a personal licence, so they have to be authorised by the DPS to do so. And that is in writing. Within this manual, there's an authorisation sheet. So when the members of staff are first trained, they all have to sign to say they've been trained, and then DPS would countersign and say that they have been trained, and that will go up behind the counter. So if an officer, as Mr. Light indicates, came into the store and wants to know if a member of staff behind the till has been trained, member of staff just point out their name on the sheet. Now, people forget things. So, say if someone's been off ill for a while, they may not remember their training or just need a refresher and a prompt. So at least annually, the member of staff, every member of staff will be taken through one of the 5 tests to refresh their memories. And they will read through the little pamphlet and they'll be tested again. It would probably proper to use a different test so they don't memorise the answers for the first one. Now, it could be, as I said, you asked about how often when the refresher training should take place. Well,
No. What I asked was, what would be an occasion that would prompt you to do a refresher training?
well, so
What behaviour would happen?
Well, if there was any issues in the store where there was a problem, then that would prompt the DPS to retrain a member of staff. Or if, say, a member of staff was off for an extended period of time, it would be appropriate to have that member of staff in and retrain them when they came back to work. There's circumstances such as that. Clearly, any new member of staff joining after the shop's opened, they will be taken through that as a matter of course before they're allowed to.
Thank you. Could I ask, gosh, how do you say your last name? Guinness and Durham. Have you used such a training manual before?
Yes.
You have. So you're familiar with it.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
And you preferred the gentleman to your left to answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like to ask a question, Councillor Lee?
Yes, thank you. Yes, to the applicant, whose name I cannot pronounce, so I won't even try. Do you run any other establishments concurrently with the one you are applying for?
And you said,
Is this a sole establishment that you run, or do you have other establishments
I got petrol station.
you currently
run
have?
currently.
Yeah. Away from here, presumably.
It is in Bexhill. It's near 5 minutes from
Oh, right.
This place.
Okay. Thank you.
So Glen Gap.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask one question?
Yes, certainly, yes.
Or his legal. The petrol station, this is an obvious question. Does that have a license? Is it a licensed petrol station?
Yes.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions from members of the panel? No? All right. In that case, the next thing is I would like to ask the objector to state his opinion, please. Mr. Crotty, Mr. Andrew Crotty.
Good afternoon. Am I allowed to ask questions as well, or do I just state?
At the moment, you just simply make your own case, the
Okay,
reasons
that's
why
fine.
you object, please.
That's fine. Basically, obviously I live in Weston Road, been there 15 years. With Weston Road being a popular destination for the pub, Devonshire up the road, people going down the road to the Rose Kebab, there's been a lot of antisocial behaviour, people running down the road, smashing windows, jumping over cars and breaking cars. Now, with Wetherspoons being down there, there's an influx of them meeting halfway. And basically, just alone in May, police had reported 32 violence and sexual offences, 23 antisocial behaviours, and 10 criminal damages and other thefts of 6. That's just in May alone. In the whole of this year, from January to June, there has been an increase of antisocial behaviour of 31.1% higher. That's 318. Public order offences of 77, which is up by 7.5. And violence and sexual offences 309, which is again percentage of 30.3% higher. Basically, I live in that road, and 6:30 in the morning is too early, I feel, for a shop to be opening selling alcohol, especially when you have certain clientele that will be loving that, and if they get drunk quicker, they'll be causing more of a nuisance. We had a big problem last year working with the police where shoplifters were just easy picking out of the co-op. Now it's changed to Jemson's. We have a security officer there, so now they're targeting somewhere else. Now, as you're opening up, well, you've opened up this week. So the shop hasn't actually been shut. The shop is actually trading this week. So what I wanted to say was, I believe 6:30 is too early. Like Wetherspoons, Co-op, and another off license, 7 o'clock in the morning is adequate and acceptable for me, like everyone else. You say that the police licensing commission hasn't spoken to you. That's because it's changed hands and the gentleman's on annual leave till today. And I do believe that this is the second attempt application, because the first one, the gentleman drew it because of more than one complaint, as well as the police complaint saying that 6 o'clock in the morning was too early, as well as the gentleman wanted to open till 2 in the morning, Friday and Saturday.
So if I can interrupt, I think we need to confine our remarks to the case immediately in front of us.
That's fine. And that my case is that I believe 6:30 in the morning is too early. 7 o'clock in the morning is fine and adequate, like everyone else opened up, due to the antisocial behaviour on the increase. And obviously, it's going to be probably the same again on Sunday when whatever happens, come win or lose. I believe that 6:30 is too early, especially for a residential area.
Thank you, Mr. Crotty, for representing your case to us clearly. Can I now ask members of the panel what questions they would like to ask Mr. Crotty?
Hello, Andrew. How are you? Okay, your statistics came from.
Sussex Police.
Okay.
That's online easily.
Okay.
It shows the mapping.
Pretty disturbing, I would think, antisocial behaviour.
It has. Obviously, it was a lot quieter when the Devonshire was closed. But obviously, they've been pretty quiet from what I can gather. It's just people coming out of Wetherspoons up the road. Obviously, with the COVID lockdown as well, it's been a little bit quiet. But it is going to probably be on the increase coming out to the lockdown and after the football. But when I saw that, I couldn't believe how bad that was in that area of the town.
I'm surprised if those statistics are correct, that the police haven't responded
They're a little bit stretched. As I've worked with community
No,
police. I've worked with
understand
community police, so they're very helpful. We have got banning orders for a certain member who was a kingpin in drug and theft. There's another gentleman who is clear drug taker, drug user, who based in Western Road, opposite Wetherspoons, who the police are aware of. But again, it's getting the proof.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I just
David.
make a comment? Can I just ask the representative just to focus the fact that the antisocial behaviour and the noise has got to be attributable to the venue. You can't expect the applicant to be responsible for the entire road and the behaviour in the road. And the second point I'd make is in relation to the police. And if they wish to make a representation, they were at liberty to do so. And whether they're on leave or if the officer's off, surely if they were going to make a representation, they would have done so in any event. Just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Just to say that the panel can only take into account what is actually received rather than speculations about what we might have received under other circumstances.
Sorry, Chair, could I just add to that?
Yes, of course.
Please. We did receive communication from the police within the allotted timescales that they did not want to make, that they had no objections. So we did receive communication from them within the time frame.
So the police position is absolutely clear.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And any further questions? I would just like to ask a question, rather following up the remarks by Kirsty Layton, which is, what evidence do you have to relate the street disturbances to the purchase of alcohol from shops as against it being purchased from licensed premises such as Wetherspoons? What evidence do you have to relate one to the other, please?
The evidence is basically looking out my window and seeing them running down the road with bottles in their hands. And like I said in my report, I will make sure that I will be keeping a close eye on any more disturbances, which I have reported to the police.
What time of the day do you observe those people behaving in that way?
Midnight.
Right.
11
So
o'clock,
how would that
10 o'clock.
relate to your suggestion that we change the times from 6:30 to 7 o'clock? If it's midnight when you see these.
Because also during the daytime, especially about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you have a certain gentleman shouting and swearing when kids are coming home from school, where he's been drinking.
Okay, thank you. Right, now at this point, it is now for the applicant, I think. That's why I need to change my glasses to ascertain this. It is now for the person who making representations, that's yourself, to sum up. So would you like to sum up your case for the benefit of this group? Sorry, it's the applicant. Is that? I thought that ran the wrong way. It's the applicant first, and then the person who is objecting. Okay, so can I ask, Mr. Lighter, do you wish to make a further submission? No, I'm sorry. Can I just explain that I'm actually substituting somebody else? So my apologies for the mistakes that I made. I apologize for that.
I'll put this on. Just simply say that you've got an application for a convenience store with reasonable hours, and an applicant who's experienced in this trade. He's got 10 years experience and a number of experience as a DPS. He's been advised by Mr. Baker, who's been a licensing consultant for some considerable time. And he's produced a licensing manual, which will ensure all the staff are properly trained, and also a list of conditions, which will ensure that the premises trade responsibly. And I'm sure if there are any issues which do come to light, that if they're communicated to the applicant, if they are arising from the shop, which is hopefully not going to be the case, then something can be looked at. But at the moment, there's no evidence from the police or from environmental health or any other responsible authority to say that they're in their expert view, this license will cause any problems or increase any problems which may or may not be there at the moment. And therefore, I would just ask that you grant the application as a note from Mr. Bates. This is about procedure, so it's not his business really. So yes, that's the application. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Right. Mr. Crotty, would you like to sum up your case, please?
Like I said, as a resident and speaking with the other residents, I would like to say that 6:30 is too early for a shop to be open. Now, I'd like it to be 7 a.m. because what's to start other shops starting open up from 6:30 in the morning? And from a resident's point of view, having the shop open at 6:30 in the morning would be a noise disturbance with deliveries coming in.
Thank you very much. Can I just emphasise that this is like the last chance to make submissions to the panel. So I would just like to check there's nobody in this room who would like to say something further to help with our deliberation. Is there anybody who wishes to? Mr. Crotty, yes.
I wanted to ask one question about DPS. What happens if they if there's something wrong? Do they get like is there a warning, or as a licensee of a DPS person, if they train somebody to say, like recently the lottery changed from 16 to 18 years old, and someone bought a lottery ticket who's 16 and they're not allowed to because they change the rules, what does the DPS get? Is it a banning or is it a warning?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean. If the DPS breaks the rules, you mean, what happens to the DPS? Well, I don't know. The DPS is the person in charge of the premises, so that he's the person or she's the person.
Can I just, sorry to interrupt, Mr. Knight, can I just say that that is in a way outside the scope of what we're deciding today, because obviously if there were disagreements that a person had not kept to the actual regulations, then obviously there would be movement to make sure there's some kind of enforcement. So that's beyond our scope.
Okay, I was just checking to see how good his record is as DPS.
Can I?
But it's just a question.
If I can just assist, as with any application, if this is granted, there is always the opportunity that if things go wrong, it can be reviewed. And under the Licensing Act regime, which is, we are not, the scope of that today is vast, but the opportunity is there if necessary.
Yeah, there's always a chance for a license to be revoked if there's reason for that to be the case. So that would apply to this case, but all other cases as well. Okay. Okay, I think we've now heard from everybody. We're now in a position to consider what our decision is going to be. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I'd like to thank you for presenting your cases with such clarity and concision, actually. So that's been very, very helpful to the panel. And as I say, thank you for coming. We'll attempt to make our decision as speedily as possible, but also trying to take very careful account of the laws which have to apply in this case. So thank you very much. And that's the end of the public part of this session. Yes. Oh, sorry, we need to just wait until we. Bye. I'd just like to start by thanking Kieran, who's been responsible for the broadcasting of the session this afternoon, and also the people who contributed to our deliberations, Louise Hollingsworth and Emma Deenan. And now I come to the decision. It is as follows. Having heard in detail from the applicant's legal representator, and taking everything into account, including the council's own licensing policy and Section 182 guidance under the Licensing Act 2003, we're satisfied on balance that the applicant has shown that he can uphold all of the licensing objectives, and in particular, the licensing objective of the prevention of public nuisance. We've listened carefully to all the submissions, and we are bound to be directed by the principal licensing objectives and material considerations of prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, prevention of public nuisance, and protection of children from harm. On balance, the panel accepts the evidence provided in support of the premises license application, together with the letter of objection, and has decided to grant the application subject to conditions. In recognising the concerns raised about the specific issues under the licensing objectives, the application is granted subject to the following conditions: the proposed activities, days and times for the retail sale of alcohol will be from Monday to Sunday, 6:30 to 2300 hours, off the premises, and the hours premises are to be open are stated on the application form, and they are Monday to Sunday, also 6:30 to 2300 hours. Would you like, Kirsty, just to make a few additional remarks, please?
Thank you, Chairman. As with all these cases, there is a right of appeal. This extends to persons who have made representations where a licence has been granted or the relevant conditions have not been imposed upon the licence. Full details of all the rights of appeal can be found within Schedule 5 of the Licensing Act. Any such appeal has to be made to the Magistrates Court in Brighton within 21 days from the date of the decision. You must contact the court to establish a procedure for such appeal, of which there is a fee and a considerable wait currently. No further submissions.
Thank you very much. I'd also like to thank my fellow councillors, Councillor Timpe and Councillor Madley, for their contribution to the proceedings, and also yourselves for what you contributed. Thank you very much indeed. At the minute, that concludes the licensing panel. Thank you.